I'm afraid, I'm afraid. I'm able to express it. If I'm angry, I can express it and feel it. That's what being out of repression is like. So the people that listen to this, you may not even know that you're repressing until you start doing some of these inquiries, though. That's one of the things about New Model, is that we're finally facing a lot of the stuff we were running from. So it takes a lot of compassion and just rest and patience sometimes to be with that, because we've spent a lifetime running from it.
I couldn't open the message in the pain. There was a signal in the body and it wanted to say something, but I couldn't stop and listen.
But it's also how we relate to each other in this, with tons of compassion and acceptance and love for how people are, how they're showing up, where they're at in the process, without expecting them to be in a different place. Like, everybody's allowed to be where they're at.
What is the truest that I can say to that part of myself? And it was that I'm so sorry that I don't know how to approach you and how to be with you. I process, I change, I'm still here and I'm safe. And
Yes.
It's okay and fine.
Yes, yes. And you're not out of control. These programs that we believe in order to stay safe, they don't actually keep us safe. That's the thing. So when you're observing and allowing something, there's already acceptance of it, just by seeing it. Even if you're resisting it, then there's allowing that. Like, you're allowing from awareness things. And I think that's important to this.
I wanted to include the mind by dropping it. Full compassion for me can happen only if I go to the root, because there is the full I have the full understanding.
Yeah, deeper embodiment, deeper realization that way than trying to say it's not you and turning away from it always.
Because if I bypass, if I don't go into the human part, I'm constantly losing my power, cutting my power. I hope that people hear that once you taste it, that you win your power back with self-inquiry, you cannot stop.
There's a way to being awareness that's disempowered, and that goes towards submission and deficiency story, disempowerment, versus real empowerment, which is the absence of that. And how much we are traumatized, wounded, disempowered selves, giving all of our power away to a teacher, for example. And that whole scenario can reinforce that.
This is the real I recognition, no? When I totally, completely hold myself. So thank you for accepting my invitation to talk today. And first, I would like to talk with you about new model. What that means, because maybe people will watch these videos who doesn't know anything about new model or KI. What does it mean to practice new model in our daily life on during inquiry?
How much time do you have? There's the long version and the short version.
I mean, in my experience, the new model is like, because doing Kiloby inquiry in a real experience is really a deep thing for me, you know. It really brings up things and shows my beliefs, and all the hidden energies come up. And to be able to do this, I really have to be compassionate with myself when these things come up. Mm-hmm. And for me, new model is like reholding the space for inquiry and to go through all these processes with unconditional compassion, presence, and love. Uh-huh. And I just go deeper and deeper in this while I've been doing the inquiry process. For me, this is new model, and I just wanted to ask you what is it in your experience when you do inquiry or when you hold space to a client? What does it mean, new model or unconditional approach?
It means looking at everything, like anything that would be a driver. So a lot of the new model is focused on addictions, but it's not completely about that. But it started with addiction. So the idea is, in the past, with addictions, people would be focusing on their behavior. Like, that's one thing about new model. We don't focus on the behavior so much. we focus on the drivers, all this stuff that you're looking at, like the trauma, the deficiency stories, the emotional repression. Science tells us that that's what drives addiction anyway. So we're focused on what we feel like there are the true drivers instead of focusing on the behavior. And then within that, living in an environment that supports that. Hopefully, not everybody lives in that environment, but a lot of environments when people are in addiction is people are trying to get you to stop or, anxious. Or here it's about creating an environment where everyone knows the process that one is in, and we're supportive of that. And that includes unconditional love and acceptance in that environment, not just for self, like not just for unconditional love for what arises, like allowing everything. That's one aspect of it, but it's also how we relate to each other in this, with tons of compassion and acceptance and love for how people are, how they're showing up, where they're at in the process, without expecting them to be in a different place. Like everybody's allowed to be where they're at, dealing with what they're dealing with. But with New Model, the focus is on inquiry, as you know, like you say, going deep with inquiry, and not just sitting around doing nothing, but actually looking at our stuff that's connected to it.
Yeah, yesterday was that that I'm in deep core inquiries like deficiency stories. And I thought that I've been practicing with that part of myself, the PTSD and everything. And I thought that I've been practicing unconditional acceptance and approach towards that part of myself. And I tried to inquire into this. I was really just feeling into this and just seeing a picture of myself. I felt like this hurt and sadness and nervousness. And I saw myself just sitting at the dark corner of the room, so to speak, as a small child. And I really tried to approach that part of myself. And I imagined going there and just putting my hands on my own back, or trying to just be present. But it was like kind of cold. There was some kind of coldness, that it felt it's not completely honest or something, that I want to do this, but actually I don't know how to do this. And when I inquire, I always try to find my truth in that present moment, because my mind likes to go ahead and create something that is not my actual experience. So I was sitting and I was asking myself, what is true at the moment that I can say? What is the truest that I can say to that part of myself? And it was that, I'm so sorry that I don't know how to approach you and how to be with you, with the nervous and sad and hurt self, And I've never told this before. And here the connection could start with this part of myself, actually, and with these feelings. There was a real connection. And yes, I have to learn how to be with myself, because this subconscious program, I don't know how to call it, to run from that is present in me, because it's been here for a very long time. This energy to turn away from it and not to feel it is very strong.
Yeah. That's probably true of all the drivers, now that I think about it. Like you're talking about, I think, trauma, but any of these programs, people will encounter that, like having a habit of running away from or avoiding or repressing and not dealing with something. That's one of the things about New Model, was that we're finally facing a lot of the stuff we were running from. So it takes a lot of compassion and just rest and patience sometimes to be with that, because we've spent a lifetime running from it. I can relate to it with the repression as the most recent thing. The anger repression that was within me, I spent my life running from that, from anger.
And how could you step into the anger?
So I had to do the inquiries in order to bring it out of repression. So for me, it was in chronic pain. It was showing up as chronic pain. So it was very difficult to be compassionate and restful with that pain. I'll tell you, it was very difficult. So I had to learn how to skillfully inquire, like unpack it and be with each of the programs that were with it, each set of words, each sensation, each feeling as it came up. But it wasn't something that at first that I could just sit with. Like, it was very powerful, probably like yours is, like very strong, and you kind of want to run from it or not deal with it.
Yeah.
But new model, we're always encouraged to come back to it. And we have nice skills that help to make it easier to be with it, right? Because if you're dealing with a whole bunch of thoughts and feelings and sensations, it can be overwhelming. But if you're just dealing with it in a piecemeal fashion, like you said, like what's true for you now, like that would be like dealing with just what's here now is a gentle, humane way of being with things, instead of, like you say, your mind going ahead of how it should be, what's here now. And that's what I dealt with the repression, is what was here now was pain. What was there now was anger, repression. So I just learned, I guess, over time, you learn how to, you don't really learn it in the way the mind learns things, but through experience, you learn how to be with things more and more. That's a big part of new model, but that's also just a big part of KI generally. KI, Kiloby inquiries, were that's true of all of that, really.
Yes, I mean, we really have to learn how to stop with all of that being in running mode since decades, And actually, if I wouldn't have that strong pain in the colon that is not there anymore, I would not stop. I would not stop, I think. So this pain was really an important point of my life where I could just really be with myself and with the pain and what is behind the pain, because it was like the pain was saying something that I couldn't hear, that I couldn't open the message in the pain, actually. I couldn't open the message in the pain. There was a signal in the body and it wanted to say something, but I couldn't stop and listen. And this is when Kiloby inquiries came in the picture, and it really taught me how to listen what my body is saying and what my mind is saying also.
Yeah.
It was like, before I couldn't see all those beliefs that I can see now. Gradually, it's coming in the front. And now I'm also realizing with this repression inquiry and deficiency stories that belief it's so much believed. I don't know how to say, but I could see today also that as a child, I started to believe that no matter what the others say in my life, my belief that what my parents say about me is my only truth. Like if I feel I'm not important to them, I could say anything to myself to prove myself. It just doesn't work, and it's still running in the present. No matter what you are going to say to me, or Serena, you are a kind girl, or you are that good girl, or anything, you are good people. Something just does not believe it. Yeah, and it takes a lot of inquiry to change, to see the belief and slowly change the driver, to see the driver.
Yeah, the way that you explained that helped me put words to it, because if you think of how we're running away from things all of our life, it's either because it's too painful and or we just don't have the skill to deal with it. So it makes sense why we would run from something that we don't know how to be with anyway. But as you know, with these tools, we can pick things apart, look at things in, again, a piecemeal fashion. So it makes it easier, not easy, but easier to be with it. So that just occurred to me to say it that way, because why would I turn towards my pain? I just keep running from it if I don't have a way to be with it, if it just overwhelms me. But now we have some tools where it won't overwhelm us, I guess. And many of us are meeting our pain for the first time. And you mentioned positive affirmations. Like the trying to talk yourself into freedom in that way goes against how the body actually holds this stuff. Like the body believes it, like it's Velcro to the body. I'm not important. So you can try to override that with your mind, but the body remembers it. So part of it is meeting the pain there, so that we stop trying to override it and run from it. And then there it is. And we integrate it, we allow it in the end.
Yeah, because the body feels that if I allow completely, then I'm gonna die. That is a strong feeling sometimes, that if I completely allow my present state as it is, I'm going to die. Or like if there is a black hole, that I'm going to lose myself or something.
Or lose control. Yeah,
what is going to happen if I resolve the driver?
I just got an email from someone who has been so afraid to start this work because they're afraid that what might happen may be too much. And that's where a lot of us, I think, shy away from this deeper work, is the mind will start to say things like, it's going to be too much, I'm going to be out of control. But that's the mind. That's what the mind is saying. Having not gone through it yet, of course it would say things like that, right? So we kind of have to go through it and experience.
Yeah, and even though already have the proof in my experience that as I resolve the drivers and the beliefs, still somewhere it is deeply embedded or ingrained that it's going to be worse if I overcome that driver, if I process the driver, if I completely see this. How am I going to function without the driver? It's still, I can see that I'm overcoming these things, I'm transcending through the KI, and still there is a belief that I don't know how I'm going to live without it.
Yeah, and if you think about it, with KI, we discover utilities, so we can see it's not rocket science. It's not a mystery as to why we think that way, because all of our life we've believed this to stay safe, or at least we thought that we believe this program or that to stay safe. So that's a utility. So of course, the same mind that has that utility is going to say, how would I exist or survive without it? See, it's not a mystery then. You just know what's going on now.
Yeah, it is not a mystery. Yes, it's good in KI that it brings every mystery to the ground, because there is no mystery.
Right.
Yeah, so
the mystery would be uncovering what we haven't seen yet. If there's a mystery, it'd be like, as you're about to embark on this, you don't know, but as you start to look at it, it demystifies itself, because you can see the programs, you can see the utilities, you can feel everything in front of you. But so I can see why the guy was scared to do it up front, though, because had he not done the work where it's all revealed to you, then his mind is left to be afraid of what would happen.
Yeah, and it's the same mystery that maybe I also I escaped the things in my childhood, creating a magic world or, imagining things. And as I bypassed into these imaginations, I think it's the same foggy mystery things where I'm running I'm escaping into when I can't see the functioning yet, or something is not revealed yet. So I'm still running into this subconscious magical state of awareness or something like this. But it's so good in the KI also that I experience that I process, I change, I'm still here, and I'm safe. And It's okay and fine.
Yes. And you're not out of control, you see.
Yeah.
So,
no.
Right.
Yeah. And that the reality as it is safe. And actually, what wasn't safe is denying the reality of my life. It's just my life, actually.
Yeah.
When there is no resistance towards that, it's just safe. And I'm just, okay, what's here?
Yeah.
But before it wasn't like this, because that I have the Advaita background, and there was a strong escape in the Advaita mind somehow. And because I didn't process the thing in the background, in the subconscious, I reality felt as if it's dangerous and not safe and something that is not touchable or something like this.
Yeah.
Didn't feel
That,
real.
yeah. That really illuminates the safety element. So all of our life, here's the thing that doesn't get questioned. These programs that we believe in order to stay safe, they don't actually keep us safe. That's the thing. Is they
Yeah.
usually keep us in some form of anxiety and reactivity. But the mind thinks that we have to have the program to stay safe. So that's what gets dispelled. And I think that's why there's safety showing up for people, because it wasn't safe to begin with to believe in these things. They were very fear producing. So when that starts to fall away, there is an inherent safety that feels like it's here.
Yes, fear produced the driver and the mechanism and the belief. I love that. I love to see that. We always try to find a solution on the same path, on the same track somehow. We try to track it on the same way. And it just doesn't work, actually. Yeah, it's so good to see this.
So new models for anyone who's suffering from addiction, but it is broader than that for people listening. So the spirit of new model is really just to look at everything that's driving something. So it's maybe easy to see it with addiction. If you have addiction, what is driving it? But there are people who use the spirit of new model for anything that they're believing. Like even if someone has a diagnosis like bipolar, and their whole life they've been going to that thought, bipolar mind, to answer everything, not realizing that the bipolar diagnosis is actually making them feel deficient. Like it's actually creating suffering. So we go to the drivers instead of hanging on the diagnosis, just that's what you are. We look at all the stuff that's driving that instead of just medicating a diagnosis. That's a difference too, that people use it for that too, not just addiction.
Yes, because if it's only diagnosis, it can take my power. It can be a strong label. Just putting diagnosis and you just help, like, okay, I'm that. What can I do? It's very heavy, actually.
Yeah, it can actually stop people from looking. Diagnoses can, because then the mind thinks it knows what's there, and then it doesn't investigate. There's no investigation sometimes when like I had that with my chronic pain. They told me I had spinal stenosis, so there was no investigation after that. Like it stopped me in my tracks until I opened it back up. It stopped hanging on the diagnosis and found there was more there. There was trauma still, driver.
Yeah, and for you, it was also that the MRI showed your problem. So it's very strong label, and it can stop actually. Yeah.
So many people are getting diagnosed with like bipolar, borderline personality disorder, schizoaffective disorder, and you can see how they feel certain. They feel like, oh, okay, now I know, and it gives them a certain safety. There it is again. Like somehow in knowing what I have, I feel safe. Yeah. But it actually, you don't feel safe. Actually, in the beginning, you get the diagnosis and you might feel secure, but after a while, if the diagnosis becomes your identity, and you're not actually exploring the drivers, then it wouldn't be a safe situation. You'll just be spiraling. Some people are spiraling in that because they're not investigating it. They're just, going back to the belief that I have this, this diagnosis or that.
Yeah. Yeah, one more thing I wanted to talk about is what I consider to be the basis of KI is awareness, that it is awareness based, because now we were talking about the unconditional part, that really being unconditional towards ourselves and each other in the community, this approach. But what I found also very important in my practice also is the awareness part, that I'm not just working in the story through the story and identified in the story, but doing it from awareness, like really from a conscious presence. Maybe it's more understandable for some people, like really having, KI is rooted in awareness somehow, no? That it brings back everything to awareness, to some natural state and rest. And I just wanted to ask, why is it so important to be aware during the process as much as you can, and how to, if somebody doesn't know what is awareness or conscious presence, what does it mean in the experience? That's just to do inquiry and see certain things which maybe upset people, how to hold it from awareness. What does it mean to inquire from awareness?
Well, if you're not inquiring from awareness, what happens is if you see through a certain story, the mind comes in and makes up another belief. It'll like substitute, when something falls away, it'll try to put another belief or story or program there until you start to recognize there's an awareness under all that. And when things fall away, you don't have to put anything there. You can just be presence. You can live in presence. So there's a transformation that happens. It's more than about processing stories and creating a new story or a new belief. It's dismantling these beliefs that are our programming. And so awareness is important because things have to fall away in that. There's a falling away that happens. It's not just processing things and coming up with a new conclusion. The falling away is a transformation. But the other thing is there's just power in witnessing. So if you try to think about something, you've alluded to that already. If I try to think myself into safety, it's very difficult because the body remembers the fear. Yeah. So, but if you're observing, the power of watching something is different than just thinking about it. There's something about the power of just seeing something, again, seeing it fall away, where you're not identifying with it as much. You're allowing it, seeing it, let it be here, but you're not rethinking it into experience so observing helps that.
Yeah, and not observing, like just trying to be present with it and accept it when I actually want to resolve it, but bring awareness into the process itself when these things move. And as you said, that it falls into awareness and it resolves into awareness.
But there's also an acceptance there. So let's talk about that. So when you're observing and allowing something, there's already an acceptance of it just by seeing it. Even if you're resisting it, then there's allowing that. Like you're allowing from awareness things. And I think that's important to this. Like
to allow
because how do you allow something through thinking? I don't know how to do it. Like when I sit and think about something, I accept it. But if my body doesn't accept it, it doesn't take.
Mm-hmm.
So my body's still scared and I'm trying to accept something up here, the body wins out because the fear wins out, or the trauma or the deficiency story or whatever in the body wins out. Because but just in observing it, that's different because you're not trying to rearrange it in your mind. So it's going all the way down into the body too. You're observing and allowing feelings. Mm-hmm. So all that acceptance helps. Just in observing and allowing, there's acceptance there.
Yeah, acceptance towards that also when I don't have the capacity to change something or to have the right attitude, I don't know how to say, with myself when something is there and I just don't have the capacity to reach it in a good way. I don't know how to say, with understanding and with acceptance, even to have compassion towards this. Yeah. Yeah. It's like when, it's like when I don't know what to do with myself or how to be with myself. How much time do you have, by the way?
A few minutes here. Yeah. 15 or so.
Okay. When I don't know how to be with myself, I always ask myself, how would I be with the children who has these feelings? A child, mm-hmm. If I'm upset, if I'm anxious or something, and I don't know how to be with myself, I always just ask myself, okay, if it would be a child, what would you do? Right. And Yeah, and then always the response comes and it's just obvious. Then I don't think in the mind or try to arrange in the mind. It becomes just obvious,
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to say in words when you have this compassion and connection.
But those metaphors are good, like allowing a child to be as they are. Like if you get upset with the child, you can, then you add resistance to the situation or whatever. But if you can allow the child to just do what they're doing, that's the way. So if I can allow a thought or a feeling to just do whatever it's doing. And the other thing is, if you were with a child who needed your attention, you wouldn't abandon the child. You would stay with the child until the child didn't need you anymore. And that's kind of the same way we take with these thoughts and feelings. Can we stay with them and stop abandoning them? We've been abandoning them all our lives, pushing them down into the unconscious and not dealing with it. So the child metaphor works there. Of like if a child shows up, then be with it, stay with it because you've been turning away your whole
Yeah,
life.
yeah, resisting even to be with the child,
Hmm.
resisting even to be with the child. Yeah.
Or stay with it once it's up, something that's really painful or scary. But if we stay with it, that's when it gets discharged. Like if we'll just be with it and rest with it. But we turn away so much, so we don't get that experience with a lot of things.
Yeah, because I feel when I turn away, I don't feel love. Somehow love goes out of the picture. And for me, love
Hmm.
is just connection, like the language of connection. And it feels like the resistance. Yes, it's like the resistance. If the resistance is there, I forget to love. Something like this.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, loving even resistance. That's another. We're seeing a lot of resistance with this work because we're dealing with really scary things. But even meeting the resistance and allowing that, that's important because otherwise the resistance will take us out of the looking. So everything is allowed. It's what we're trying to point to here.
Yeah. Yes, everything is allowed. Hmm. Yeah. You know, when I inquire into the drivers, into deficiency, it's really like a driver for me because it's core identity. Before, the way in which I ease myself is like eating chocolate, eating sugary things.
Hmm.
And yesterday I was doing that inquiry and I felt like quiet ease that I didn't feel that there was any driver. And I opened the fridge. I looked into the fridge. There was the yummy stuff, chocolate thing, and it was so strange that the driver wasn't there.
Hmm.
There was no energy to, oh my god, eat this, eat this, eat this, calm
Hmm.
yourself down with the chocolate stuff. And it was like empty. And this is always a good sign for me that I'm going the right direction, that it works, and it works in the long term.
Hmm. Yeah, and by the way, speaking of that, like that's an easier way than trying to force yourself not to eat the chocolate. So if you would go to the refrigerator and you have all that energy that really wants it, but then you try to say no, then you're fighting against yourself. A lot of
No,
people
it
have
doesn't
trouble with
work.
that.
I eat the
Mm.
chocolate, but I'm present as much as I can in the action of eating the chocolate, and then I do inquiry and yeah. Yeah, but
Mhm.
stopping myself eating chocolate, it's something that doesn't work. Then I just get more resistance and anxiety around it.
Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to talk about is that you developed KI with Dan. And I was thinking a lot that, okay, now I have the KI. It's like I have the tools and it's already made. It's ready tools and I can use it. It's developing, it's moving and it's alive and it's changing and new inquiries come, but basic tools I have. And I was thinking, how was it for you? And then when you developed the tools, because you had some issue, I'm sure Dan had some issue when you to develop the tools. And I was thinking, how was the process that process the stuff to be with it, but you don't have the tools yet, like this really direct tools. I'm sure there was a good reason to create the Kiloby Inquiry.
Yeah.
And from where does it come from?
Every tool was developed out of necessity. So as we were looking together, we developed this in a hot tub. Did it all in a hot tub at night, every night for years, a couple of years. And everything was developed because of something that needed to be developed. Like if something was too strong coming up, we developed little tools to just lighten it. Just all sorts of things. Everything that you find in KI came from necessity. It was none of it was theory. Not like, whoa, let's think about this. No, we did it in the moment because it helped. And we just kept the tools. So in the beginning, it was probably clunkier than it is now. Like when we first started, we were just developing it. We didn't have the full toolbox. But again, because things were coming up for Dan, like one of the things that came up for Dan is when words or pictures would come to awareness, he would be so identified with them and his body would feel so much that he couldn't turn towards them. So we've developed several tools to help people turn towards them, to lighten up the identification. That came directly from Dan's experience, like, or every tool came from that, from something that we couldn't access until we developed a new tool to access it, including the repression work.
Yeah. And what makes repression deep? There is lighter or deeper repression, or it's just repression?
What makes it repression?
Deep.
I think if it's built into your personality, the more it's built into our personality, the deeper it is, and the more we're identified with it. So, like, the whole peacemaker ego that I talk about, that particular personality where it's most important to be seen as good or spiritual or nice. That's it. Anger repression is an integral part of that personality. That personality cannot just be angry all the time and still accomplish the goal of peacemaking. So in those, it's going to be really embedded into the personality. For others, it will be too. And I feel like the more the more that we've survived with it, the more that we've used repression to survive, the more it's ingrained and deeper it is in our experience. But everybody represses something. That's what I've noticed. Most people repress something, right, in order to show up the way that they show up in the world as an adult.
We repress ourselves, who we are, no? Mm-hmm. We just can't be the way we are, just to feel or express the way we are, and I also maybe repressing in a way that I want to act differently or I want to show up differently. Mm-hmm. This is also because it seems that it goes outwards, but it's still repression because I'm not experiencing who I am in the moment.
Yeah.
With whatever is there, and like if I want to cough, I cough or something I don't know how to say.
Yeah.
Or
if I'm afraid, I'm afraid.
Sorry?
If I'm afraid, I'm afraid. I'm able to express it. If I'm angry, I can express it and feel it. That's what being out of repression is like. So the people that listen to this, you may not even know that you're repressing until you start doing some of these inquiries, though. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, is that, let me say this real quick, is a lot of people that hear this will say they're not repressing anything. I said the same thing, because it's so close to your personality that you can't see it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, because if we say just normal people who is not into any self-work or any conscious work or anything, I mean, repression is just normal. This is the way we live our life. I mean, I don't want to go too far. I was like this, like it was repressing and being constantly nervous is just the way I know life. Like, this is life for me. So yeah, when I started to work with it, then I realized that there is a lot of stuff got repressed.
You and everybody else, and spirituality, I think, can attract people who repress. I think it attracts us. I mean, not all of us are repressors, but you think about it, if you come into spirituality, you're taught to be good and spiritual and peaceful and
Yeah.
nice and positive, which
Yeah.
are all the signs of like
Oh
you're
my God.
repressing something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this becomes a strong mask. And you know what? If I'm going to remove the mask, maybe no one will recognize any change. But inside, even
Mm-hmm.
if I allow all the feelings, today I wake up and say, like, okay, today I don't repress anything and I will be just the way I am. And I will express anything, no
Mm-hmm.
matter who I meet. And maybe they will not recognize any change in me. But inside, it's like freedom. Oh my
Yeah.
God, because as I open the repressions, there is like a lot of energy, repressed energy. As it opens,
Mm-hmm.
a huge freedom comes with it.
Yeah.
It's like I can finally breathe. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
airy, it's spacious.
Mm-hmm.
But with repression, it's like always thinking myself into a something. And when all those energies can come up, oh my God, I love KI so much. Just talk about it. It's like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
so grateful that I can finally learn to live freely.
Mm-hmm. The opposite of repression is an expression. If you look on the internet, it's freedom. And that's what it's like. So people who, if you repress and you don't know it, you couldn't even possibly know what we're talking about. Because I know exactly what you're talking about, how that feels different when you're not repressed. The thing is, though, is what I'm saying is in spirituality, I think it attracts people who already repressed. And then as you're repressing, you wouldn't even know it. And certain people would go, they'll live their whole life not knowing, not being able to remove the mask of that. So they're not
Yes.
going to be able to know what we're talking about. But we're trying to invite people in because you can get a sense of it. Even if you don't see it directly, you can get a sense of being. People will say, I can't be myself fully. Even if they don't see it all, they have a sense of it. And some people
Yeah.
die that way. If never having the skill, I would have died that way had it not been for the chronic pain. I can't imagine what else would have knocked me out of that
Mm.
because it was served me. Like repressing anger served me well through my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Spiritual repression is not a funny one, also, because it's tricky. It's tricky because spiritual pointings can direct into freedom and talk about freedom and many beautiful things. And there is an experience also in this, but I can fool myself with this because there's the pointings, freedom pointing, and I just want to identify with it, because I just want to experience it. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
misunderstanding in the mind can cause it that I think I experience freedom and these people look like this and the master look like this and the master's vibe is like this. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I just want to have it. I just want to
Mm.
act
Yeah.
like this. I want to,
Mm-hmm.
I've done all of that. This is why I'm talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And something can, something gets created about it, but it doesn't come from that experience where I include the human also.
Mm-hmm.
All that I went through, all those expressions is not included because I already have picture of a perfect master.
Transcendent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good point because I didn't think of it that way. But there'll be people out there listening right now who can relate to you in the sense that they're jumping to the transcendent, trying to have that experience. And that's how we bypass and overlook these other things. I didn't actually say it that way, but I can see how everybody who comes to enlightenment is looking for that experience. So they're focused on those pointers that bring that experience, which is fine. Like you say, it's very liberating, very freeing. Truth pointings are. But the point is that along the way, things get overlooked and stuffed down and not dealt with. And so you can live your whole life that way, but sooner or later, people run up like you did against a wall.
Yeah.
Let's call it
It was
that way.
like this.
Yeah, the wall for me was chronic pain. It's like something new had to switch there, something different other than the way. And so for you, you ran up against, you even told me it could only go to a certain point
Yeah.
with some of the other pointing. So we all have those little wake up moments, or we that come to this work. I think people have this wake up moment where they recognize that they've been looking for the transcendent, and that's been a noble pursuit. But in the meantime, they've not been able to go in a certain place. Like with the real human stuff, that's the thing. Like chronic pain is human. Like it's man suffering is what it was, and deep pain. So that had to be included. I think that's what happened for you. If you want to share a little bit of it, is you could only go to a certain point.
Yeah, it happened to me because I come from Advaita background, and there is a huge, I'm very grateful for that, because to know who I am, that how to say, this natural state somehow, I don't know how to say really, but to know who I am without a question, like just to be sure about it. It was very important for me because of my heavy past and very traumatic background. So to have this recognition of the clear sense of myself, I'm not sure if without this I could go that far. So I'm very grateful for that. But because of the nature of the pointing, I couldn't include the past self, the traumatized me, who went through a lot of abuse, sexual abuse, and things that created a lot of subconscious repression and pain in the body and many, many things. But the nature of neo-Advaita pointing was that I felt free inside the prison. I couldn't, there was some dissolution through the pointings, but I couldn't reach repression because it was subconscious. So I couldn't go deep into that. Mm-hmm. And I have to say it, but I wanted to include the mind by dropping it. You know what I mean? And it just didn't work. So I was constantly in agitation mode. After a while, the first 2-3 years was quite nice to stabilize in my recognition, and it was okay. But after that, I was only just in agitation mode because I felt I need something. I need something to. I can't go further. I can't see what is here. And whenever I talked with my teacher, I received the same pointing that really couldn't help me. It helped for short term because Advaita pointing was like directing me into the space recognition where there is no mind or any conditioning. And until today, I can do this, but I don't do this anymore because it has no use in the long term. And now I'm just not interested in short-term resolution or short-term freedom, because for years I experienced it, that through the pointing, through awarenessing, I can come into a space, my space, where there is no past and person. But because I don't see the subconscious repression of my past, it just cannot last in the long term.
Yeah.
Because there is a strong belief in the mind, in the subconscious, that it is not me. And this is the trick in the neo-Advaita pointings, that I started to feel after a while that the personal conditioning is not me. And years of agitation with this. I am this, I am not this. And then the pain comes, and then the KI comes, luckily.
Mm-hmm. You really articulated that well, better than I've ever heard you say it. So I hope people listening will just rewind and listen to you, because they may not know what's going on for them. They may be in an Advaita teaching and they're bumping up against the wall of agitation, but they don't have words or context for it. But if they'll just listen to what you said it very beautifully, that something wasn't included, and that had to be included for that greater knowing to really stabilize. So here's the thing, is like people sometimes think that we're off on some tangent here. Like, but this is really relevant to abiding as awareness also.
Yeah.
Because
It's
how do you abide
always,
if you've got a body that's storing all that stuff and you're not looking at it? The body keeps the score, so it wasn't letting you abide. So I wonder how your abiding is now that that matters. Are you able just to be here in presence more without your body? I'm not saying abiding totally or fully, but has it helped with that?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
What's the question again?
Has the KI helped the embodiment of the KI?
Oh,
Has it helped you to be in awareness more, just to be here instead of in like finally
yeah,
meeting these things? Yeah.
yeah. It helped a lot because it's not that the person is not me or the personal conditioning is not me. It's that it's the resistance that let's say there is a conditioning of the perfectionist, like everything has to be good always. I have to act in a nice way. You know, this energy. Let's say this is my personality. And Advaita says, it's not you. Don't give energy or attention to that. Okay, so what to do? Because I'm still acting like this.
Yeah, your body. Yeah.
And with KI, so there is a resistance towards that part of myself, of the perfectionist, because I already judge it through my past spiritual experience. KI works with resistance, and I resolve the resistance. And if I resolve the resistance, I have no problem with the perfectionist, because embodying can happen with the perfectionist energy within myself. And I can just feel and see and love it, actually, because the KI, it's not just the, okay, an energy is here, but I can see why it is there, why the perfectionist is there. And it all goes back to the mind of a child that is innocent.
Mhm.
And it just got created. So
Yeah.
with KI, I go to the roots. I'm not working only with body energies or feelings like Advaita, like I used to do before, like I'm just present with it. Maybe I could name it perfectionist energy, present with it, but I couldn't accept because I didn't know what to do with this. Why I actually wanted to embrace it, but there was no capacity to see how to do it.
Yeah.
And this is why KI works best for me. And I never met any tool that really could trigger to the deepest root of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So for me,
Yeah.
this is essential in this work, that it goes to the root of a thing and it embraces from there, you know, it
Mm-hmm.
really embraces from there. And yeah, so full compassion for me can happen only if I go to the root, because there is the full
Yeah.
I have the full understanding
Yeah.
of the perfectionist or whatever it is.
Yeah. That's exactly how I experience it too, because resting as awareness with anger repression I wouldn't have known how to do that. There's just no
Yeah.
way I would have known how to do that. And when I had the chronic pain, all the abiding that had been happening kind of left because it was so painful that just takes up all your attention. So I had to do the same thing. You is like, I can't go back to the Advaita. All there is this, because it wasn't skillful. It just period wasn't very skillful. And so I had to go into the human experience. The human Scott character needs to repress anger. That's the thing that had to be included. It could not be excluded anymore. Or if it was, it would have ended up in who knows where. So my experience isn't really much different than yours. But the thing is to say to people is, like, people are in different places on the path. So some people may be coming to, if they're seekers, coming to these Advaita teachings, but this work can help with that, because again, it helps to embody these, we hear these things like the only way out is through, and that you wake up through your human experience. We hear that in some circles, but we have to actually do that. Like, we can't just say it, like the only way out is through. It's not just a pithy saying, like, no, the only way out of perfectionism is through it. Like,
Yeah.
go right into it. Yeah. Deeper embodiment, deeper realization that way than trying to say it's not you and turning away from it always.
Yeah, it's actually I see in Advaita circles and with my friends also that it's like a self-abuse in a way. In some cases, I'm not talking in general because I see there is awakening in it, but I see also there is a kind of self-abuse, that hatred towards the conditioned energies and conditioned feelings in ourselves, by chasing enlightenment that doesn't exist, by the way. It's very, very tricky and funny, and just running towards something, constantly running, trying to reach something that I will finally get the pill and everything will disappear. And the pain is just growing, the pain is just growing. And the more it grows, the more I hate it, because I don't get the enlightenment that I want.
Yeah.
And it's the only way is true.
Yeah. I think it scares some people. This is what it is. It just scares people because many of us are on a trajectory, like you say, to get to the transcendent, to the place where there's no self, no thing, and pristine. So we're all focused on that. So when someone comes and says, wait, hold on a second, maybe you need to go through that, I could see why certain people would be scared of that. Even people in your former community, I don't want to talk about names, but in your former community, there are people who are apparently scared of that. So it's natural. We ought to talk about it so that we're acknowledging it, the fear, because I think that's what stops some people from coming to this. It's just they're looking for that shortcut, and they want to go to the transcendent, and they want to, dismiss the relative and the human stuff. But if we keep talking about it, maybe they'll hear that there's no way around it. You really can't. It doesn't work.
Yeah, we can make it. I mean, we can create spiritual self, spiritual identity, and from a spiritual identity to go back to the human part is like, I don't find a word for that. It's like a step back or something like this.
Yeah, regression. Yeah.
But also, what I like going into the human part is that the power comes up. Because if I bypass, if I don't go into the human part, I'm constantly losing my power, cutting my power. But as I go into the things and I really meet them and I really feel them, and it resolves by feeling it and bringing it to seeing, the power comes back.
Yes.
More and more the power comes back. And once you taste it, and I hope that people hear that, once you taste it, that you win your power back with self-inquiry, you cannot stop.
Yes. Okay, that's brilliant, because the way you're saying things makes me able to articulate things more, because when people would have said things like, well, empowerment is part of this, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I would have said, not really, because I was repressed.
Yeah.
You see? So I couldn't even have known what that word was really pointing to until I did the work, that the empowering work of owning this part of myself. And so now never would I say something like that. I mean, I know what you're saying is a real thing, but I can see people would say, oh, that might just be a concept. Or what do you mean empowerment? It's all awareness. But no, it's not actually. There's a way to being an awareness that's disempowered and that goes towards submission and deficiency story, disempowerment, versus real empowerment, which is the absence of that. And it's what we're all really looking for. Those of us that have been traumatized and felt deficient all our life, we're looking for that. We're not just looking for awareness. We're looking for the empowerment that comes from no longer believing these things about ourselves. There's something there. It's very hard to articulate it, but you've said it and I've said it. And it's a real thing that shows up for people. And here's the thing, you can't know. So there's people listening to me right now, I can tell. They're just going to be saying, empowerment, that sounds new agey. That sounds like we're in non-duality now. We don't talk about that. But yes, we do, because it's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and this power come up only because I don't expect anything to save me. I mean, we give support to each other because support is needed, real human support. And I like KI community because we really support each other. We always message each other and call each other if you are right, everything's fine, but we know that we are in the process. But there is no anything like I want the master or someone, anyone to save myself from this, because then I'm giving my power away. And with this work is like I'm saving myself, I'm solving myself. So from my own consciousness, and it's so good to experience that I have the capacity, the power, the clarity, the presence to go into it, feel into it, see it, meet it, bring to the surface, really meet it. I survive. I survive the whole process. The power comes up from this, and I am able to go through this by myself. And to experience it is like it's a gift, that using KI, it's just a tool, it's just a tool. KI is just a tool.
That's all it is.
That is given. And I learned to use the tool. I learned to use the tool, and I do it by myself. You taught me how to use the tool, so it's nice. But it's just constantly giving back my power and winning my power back in some way. Like I do it. And this is the real I recognition. This is the real I recognition, no? When I totally, completely hold myself, but there is nothing is excluded, and everything is integrated, not even integrated. I don't know how to say after the point. It's just that KI is a very safe tool. I mean, it's a very safe tool to meet ourselves and all the repression and everything that we are afraid of. It's a very safe tool to meet all these because it gives a gradual process. And we have each other also in the community. So it's not that we are by ourselves.
And right now you've been sharing with me about how some of your teacher projections are falling away, some of your former teachers and whatever else. And that to me is not a coincidence because you're doing the work that's empowering. So there's an example of, I don't think people realize that in the spiritual community, maybe they do, how much we are traumatized, wounded, disempowered selves, giving all of our power away to a teacher, for example. And that whole scenario can reinforce that. So listening to your story, how you came out of that, found the empowerment within yourself, and then let go of the teacher projection. Now that you see, that's big, and a lot of people don't know the way out of that. They just they're constantly giving their power away. They have no tools on their end. So that's part of the message that we're sharing. If you're tired of projecting all this on the people and being a slave to that, then there's a way out of that by becoming the master of your own experience.
Yeah, because that's the trauma, giving my power away. And this, it played out with my teachers also in the past. They didn't want it. I did this. It's not about that they did any bad to me in that way. Maybe that they didn't recognize that there is some trauma because there were no experience to see this. But this was the trauma, to give my power away and expecting things that they cannot give. Because why should they give? I mean, and also expecting maybe too much from spiritual pointings this is something that I gave up all of this. And yeah, I just turned towards myself, because when you just don't get it, because we don't get it from the masters or from the teachings, because we have to give it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when you just constantly, repeating and you don't get it, then it's just pushing you away, and you have to look inside yourself. And in a way, it's good that we are talking about it. It's very good that it didn't give me what I wanted, because then I would never turn towards myself and do it by myself, within myself. So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. I was going to say, probably now, I don't want to speak for you, but probably now it's not, I think people are afraid to do that kind of work of empowerment and disconnecting from a teacher that they're projecting onto, maybe because they're afraid, like they may be afraid of like letting go of that because they feel still disempowered. They may not even know that. But now that you're coming out of it, is there anything to be afraid of?
No, oh my God. No, it's just getting more alive, more and more alive, whole, happy, stable, present, loving. It's so good to love, to give and receive, and everything just loses conditions. It's very free. It's that what I always wanted.
Yeah, and I bet that, I don't know this for sure, but I bet it would be hard for you to go and become truly devoted to another teacher in the same way in the past. I mean, given the changes that I've seen you through, and people ought to hear about that, because you can actually transform out of that dependency. And that's what I see in you. It's like I see you coming alive in a way. I know you see it too. You're coming alive in your own experience more. And it's nice to hear stories like that, because so many people are stuck in that. And they don't even know that they're stuck in that. They may just say, I love being with my teacher, but can you stop going to your teacher? If you ask people that, can you stop? They'll be like, no, because they're trapped in it. And so to be empowered is to step out of that trap.
Yeah, because the teacher is alive. So in his presence or in her presence, we feel that aliveness, and we think that we want that, but not the discovering inside.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Good
I
talk.
enjoyed so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.